The city watched us forget. It started with heat that had nothing to do with weather. It was July, the kind of air that presses its hand over your mouth and says hush, and our apartment learned how to keep secrets by listening to the neighbors. My name is Leon. I drew buildings for a firm that loved steel the way some people love confessions. The man I loved was Ezra, who wrote music like an apology and taught freshmen to pretend to read scores. We made coffee at ungodly hours and fell asleep to traffic arguing with itself. We were the kind of couple that rented furniture that wanted to be inherited. The building had a roof no one thanked. We would go up when the elevator behaved and the fire door didn't remember it was supposed to be locked. Ezra would smoke out of respect for the sunset, and I would tell him about the clients who thought glass was a moral improvement. He would hum phrases from a piece he swore he didn't care if anyone heard. I would count bricks and wonder how many it would take to build a safer room. He kissed like he didn't remember how until he did. No relationship dies because of one thing. Ours started starving because of three. He was composing a score for a documentary with a director who called himself honest and ordered drinks he could not pronounce. I was doing late nights with a colleague named Matteo, a lighting designer with shoulders that could carry a bad day and a temper that took weekends off. Ezra liked being believed in by the wrong man. I liked being looked at by someone who didn't expect me to be nice. The third thing was the city, which keeps offering you witnesses you didn't ask for. We had rules, of course we did. We kept them on an index card that held onto our fridge with a magnet shaped like a saxophone. We'd written them laughing one winter when we thought cleverness could keep us good. No afters without names and minutes. Compliments open no doors. Hands belong to what they're holding. We obeyed them until we wanted to be forgiven. I met Matteo on a site visit for an installation that needed to look like mercy. He wore black because it keeps secrets. He touched dimmers like he was blessing them. He made a joke about architects who confuse awe with height, and I laughed like I didn't belong to anyone. He said I was the first person in a year who made him want to go home without fear. I said I was the last person in a year who deserved to hear that. He touched my elbow to get past me in a hallway, the way people touch you when they've decided to know your schedule. Ezra met Carlson on a Tuesday that came with rain pretending to be sincerity. The documentary needed more piano and less shame. Carlson wore jeans that thought they had a point and eyes that told you he did. He leaned on Ezra's piano as if furniture owed him back rent. He said he loved music not because it meant anything, but because it made meaning a sport. Ezra told me Carlson was a problem he didn't want to solve. I told him I trusted him, which is a sentence that can hold both faith and warning if you say it into the right part of a person. I was the one who kissed first. It was after a loadout when we were sweating lies and adrenaline. Matteo handed me a bottle of water and said my name like he had decided to keep it. The room smelled like plywood and victory. We were alone because someone had to be. He leaned in the way people do when they think the present is an alibi. I kissed him because some hunger requires a witness. His mouth was warmer than I expected and less proud. He put his hand at the back of my neck and waited. We stopped when the door rattled like regret. We didn't tell. That is how affairs insist on being fair to no one. We didn't tell until Ezra did. He came home late and didn't apologize. He put his hands on the counter like he was trying to calm a very small earthquake. He said Carlson kissed me and I let him and it was terrible, and also I remembered how much I like being allowed. I said I had kissed Matteo and it was what it was and I couldn't say it was nothing. We looked at each other with the kind of honesty that sits down without being asked. He asked if I was leaving. I asked him if he wanted me to. Neither of us said yes. We tried behavioral heroism. No one touches anyone we don't live with. No one says I need air unless it means a walk. No one texts after midnight unless sirens are near. It lasted 8 days. The city does not like rules that don't move. He slipped. I fell. We both got better at lying to people who don't deserve the bad art of your excuses. The sex got worse before it got better. Bodies can tell when you're using them to measure a distance. He would put his mouth on my throat like he was checking the weather, and my hands would stop meaning yes and start meaning don't go far. Once he pushed me face down on the mattress like a man trying to stop a flood. Once I pulled his hips into mine and bit his shoulder until taste happened. The radiator hissed like an audience. We slept like we owed someone money. It should have ended with a knife. It ended with a phone. Carlson left his on our coffee table the night he came over on the lie that he needed Ezra to show him something that could not be emailed. The screen lit up with a name that wasn't a problem until you understood tone. The text said, "Miss the sound you make when you pretend not to want me," and I stayed very still, and Ezra looked at me like a man choosing a language. He said he wasn't in love with him. He said love is not a thing Carlson believes in unless he can call it a scene. He said he loved me. He said he meant it. I asked him to move closer. He did. Mateo asked me to choose, and I asked him not to ask me anything in a hallway. He said he was tired of being the kind of person who asked later. I said I was tired of being the kind of person who asked never. We kissed in a stairwell because the city loves metaphors. I told him I wouldn't leave Ezra for a last name that hadn't introduced itself to my bills. He said he respected me, and I said he didn't have to lie. We were generous with each other in bed one more time, because generosity is also a wound, and then we stopped. Ezra and I went on a road trip because running away is still a verb. We drove to a town with a pie place that believed in butter. We slept in a motel that didn't pretend to understand us. We walked by a lake that refused to be compared to anything. He reached for my hand and I let him. In the room, he asked if I wanted him and I said, "Say my name like you're asking for it." He did. We made love like a rehearsal for being younger. When he finished, he said, "Thank you the way you say it to air after you didn't drown." I wanted to call Mateo to tell him I was learning how to be kinder than cleverness. I didn't. You want to know about Carlson? He got bored. People who audition for your ruin don't stay when the casting changes. He sent Ezra 3 texts that spelled respect wrong and then stopped trying to find his mouth on other people's time. Ezra wrote him 1 letter, on paper because humiliation wants ink, saying he had made a mistake that would teach him nothing and everything. He didn't mail it. He burned it in the sink because we didn't have a balcony and some rituals need bad ventilation. Back in the city, the building pretended not to know us. We put the index card back on the fridge because we had taken it down, and taking it down was a confession. We added a line in pencil, small enough you could miss it, "Be boring in the right places." I learned to say no to other men with a voice that sounded like permission for something else. He learned to say yes to me without audition. The roof stayed locked because the super started doing his job. We found other sky. Sometimes I still wanted Mateo. Want is a sport that doesn't pay well. I unfollowed him everywhere that would make sadness look like a hobby. I kept his number because deletion is theater. Once, months later, I saw him on the train and we pretended we were good at distance. His mouth did the thing where lips forget what eyes know. He got off at a stop called somewhere else. I loved him a little then, the way you love a decision you almost made. We never told our parents because the truth is obnoxious when it isn't invited. We told 2 friends who could keep their voices calm. We told each other more than we ever needed to. We didn't change the locks because locks are not vows. We made a rule about sex that wasn't a rule. If you touch me now, it's because you want to watch me forget the bad parts for exactly the length of your patience. He became very patient. I learned where his mouth needed to be to loosen an apology out of me. The music he wrote after we almost ended sounded less like apology and more like hunger. The buildings I drew after we almost ended had more stairs and fewer views. We forgave ourselves without a ceremony, which is the right kind of religion. The city watched us forget properly, slowly, with humor, like people filing taxes for a future that deserves the good math. The last time I saw Carlson he was at a gallery opening, touching a painting with his eyes, humming a song he didn't know he'd stolen. He saw Ezra and did not come over. That felt like an anniversary. The last time I thought about Mateo with all my worst ideas was a Tuesday far from heat, when the radiator behaved and Ezra was late, and I could hear a neighbor making a mistake I had already made. I thought about texting, and then I thought about playing Debussy with my left hand and my right, and I did that instead. You want a moral. I am suspicious of morals because they always arrive after the part where you needed one. I can tell you what the index card says now, smudged from hands we learn to trust. Be home when you say, let people be furniture only if they don't mind you rearranging them, clean the sink, forgive late, kiss early. The sex is better. The intrigue is quieter. The betrayal is old enough to teach manners. It started with heat that wasn't weather. It ends with windows we open for reasons that don't need to audition. Ezra rolls toward me in the dark and says my name like a note he's proud to have struck. I say his like a chord. The city keeps offering witnesses. We keep turning off the lights.